What is up, you guys, and welcome back to Growing Upstairs. We're so glad you joined us today. Now to your hosts, Noah and Holden. Man, that new intro has got some bass to it, don't it?
Yeah, it does. It sounds good.
It does sound good in the headphones. What up, everybody? Welcome back to Growing Upstairs. How's everybody doing today? Noah, how are you?
Doing good, man. Doing great. I was waiting to see if we got a studio audience reaction with your question.
I know. Maybe I need another button that I can click on this thing over here so we'll get some crowd noise.
That's all it needs, another button.
That'll start clapping in here. I got plenty of buttons to click. No, I don't need no more buttons to click. Don't add none to me. Don't add none to me. Like we said, hey, this is Growing Upstairs, man. We're so glad for you guys coming back with us here. Season 2, Episode 2. We're on the second episode of the second season. So glad to have you guys here. As always, off the top, purpose of this show is growing with God together. We talk about Jesus, life, music, and more, and most of the time that more turns out to be food. That's what we end up talking about.
We love to talk about food.
We have got an awesome guest on here with us today. Noah, do you want to introduce who our guest is today?
Sure, Holden. Yeah, I'd be glad to. Our awesome guest today is our fantastic transitional pastor who's been helping us out during this period in our church, Brother Bruce English.
Howdy, Brother Bruce.
Hello.
Warm welcome to Brother Bruce. We are very glad he is here with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Sir. Thank y'all for inviting me.
Shoot, yeah, we're glad to have you here. Like we said, transitional and also interim pastor, I guess is would that be the title that you are at this moment, I guess?
Yes, the old version would be interim. The GBC, Georgia Baptist Convention, has changed that to transitional revitalization pastor. I just use transition.
Yeah. I could probably understand why we go with transition.
I use transition, but it's a if you want to think of in between churches, in between pastors, we come in as transitional pastors and help heal and just help the church move into the next pastor that's coming that God calls to the church.
Yeah, there you go. Well, like we said, we're glad to have you here. We've got a lot that we're going to talk to, so we're going to try to kind of dive into things. But before we really get started, Noah, where can everybody find us if they're looking for us out there?
Yeah, don't forget they can find us on Instagram at GrowingUpstairs. Be on the lookout for things there. We had a lot of fun interaction with everybody this week with some new videos and stuff as we've started going visual on YouTube. So definitely you can check us out on our YouTube page. Go back and re-listen to Season 1's episodes through YouTube and also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, different iHeartRadio, all those places where we were last season. We're still there. Yeah, I think the only place that you can't find us anymore is Google Podcasts, but I think it disappeared. I don't think it's a thing anymore, but I don't think that's the end of the world. If you listen to us on Google, there's plenty of other places to listen or watch and check out if you guys want to. So
I think we're going to survive.
I think we are too. I think we're going to be all right.
Yeah,
we're going to make it. We're going to make it. Well, Noah, how have things been going for you over the last week since we talked last time?
Things have been good. Just working and had a trip up to Macon for
right.
some banking class, and things are going good. With work and, Riley's still growing up and learning. We were talking a little bit about him before we came on with Brother Bruce, and he's hard-headed, but he's also working hard. Yeah. So, he's doing good, but I can't complain. Life has been all right here lately.
Hadn't been too bad. I've been watching a lot of the Braves.
Yeah,
a lot of the Braves, and I don't mean just the Braves on TV. My son, he gets to play for the Braves this year, so I've been watching him. He turned 6 on Tuesday. Birthday comes up Tuesday, 6, and a matter of fact, I think he either has a game on his birthday or he has one the day after, or the day before. It's either Monday or Tuesday. I need to look back, but I've been watching the Braves, and then my little boy is the Braves, and then now he's got a birthday coming up. We had a birthday party for him yesterday at the park.
Yeah. That was a good time.
That was fun. But that's pretty much all that's been going. Brother Bruce, how about you? How have things been going over the last week or so?
I'm busy. I'm very busy. I'm looking and talking to different people with the convention and evaluating my next move, where I'm going next in my next pastoral assignment. And it's getting interesting.
Getting interesting.
Yes, getting interesting. Sure is.
There's nothing wrong with that. Like you've told us before, and we also heard Dr. Jones today telling us, be in prayer for it. For everything that's going on as well. So we'll be in prayer for you just as
God
as
is not surprised.
That's right.
He's not. We have not caught him off guard.
That's right. I I can remember the first time hearing that. It was like, that's a really good point. He's not surprised by anything that's going on. We're surprised, and we think that he might be surprised, but he's like, I got this.
Yeah.
I knew this was going to happen all along. Well, that's awesome. Well, I got a starting topic for us to kind of talk about here, and there may be a purpose behind this. We'll find out as we get into it. You guys like golf? Know you like golf?
Oh, yeah.
Do you play much golf, or mainly just like watching?
I don't play as much as I'd like to play.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy. I enjoy watching the Masters.
Yeah.
I think it's the spectacle of the Masters, Augusta National. It kind of draws you in.
Yeah.
But as far as watching PGA Championship, all those other different tournaments, I don't get into it that much. I do enjoy to go out and play though when I get the chance.
Yeah. How about you, Brother Bruce?
This might shock y'all, but I have never played a game of golf in my life.
Never played around?
Not one.
Not one. You care to watch much of it, any?
I do not.
No. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
My limitations is hunting and fishing.
That's
about it.
And
Whitetail
loving
deer,
every day.
Yeah, whitetail deer and largemouth bass. That's enough for me.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Speaking of that, I took my son. We went and did a little fishing today before we came here. So if I smell like fish, I'm sorry, guys.
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah.
that was me. I'm sorry. We caught a heap load of a brim while we were out there, though. We had a lot of fun with it. But anyways, back to the golf thing. I'm the same way. I've played at least a few times, and I love. It depends. Like Sundays after church, if nothing's going on, I love going home and getting to watch like the final round of whatever it is, especially at the Masters, like it was a couple of weeks ago. But I bring that up because of the run that Scotty Scheffler's been on here lately, and I talk about him. He's a golfer, but he has also publicly came out as well and defended his faith as well, and he hasn't been afraid to say, hey, this isn't possible without God on my side. Yeah. And I think that's such a huge thing, and I think we're seeing it more and more with athletes that are coming out and saying, hey, I owe all the glory to God, and how big of a deal that is. And I was like, I'll ask these guys and see if they've enjoyed golf, or if you maybe even know the story at least of Scotty Scheffler, of what's been going on here over the last couple of weeks, and just kind of how you feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was keeping up with him. I mean, I know about him being like world number one, that type of deal. Going into the Masters, he was projected to be the favorite, and I've always respected him as a golfer, but did not realize that much about his faith and him being so outspoken about his faith until the Masters, when he started speaking up there about his faith and stuff, and really gained a lot of respect for him in that. And ended up pulling for him in that final round. I know another thing that was kind of interesting too was, he was very outspoken about not continuing that round if he found out, that if his wife was going to be having their kid.
That's right, yeah.
And I thought that was, just really, it was so abnormal. Normally you would see somebody, a golfer. A lot of people outside of that would say, well, you got to finish the round.
Yeah.
You got to finish playing. But you just see how devoted he is to being, a husband and that kind of thing. It's kind of cool to see him speak about his faith, and then also kind of see a little bit of that coming out in action, just with his willingness to be willing to do that, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, because most guys, I've probably been this way myself in times past, not thinking about it. But most guys, when the time comes, it's like, hey, I need you to come home. It's like, I'll be there when I get there, no big deal. And he's just like, no, if this happens, I'm out. I'm coming home. I'm coming to see you. But I love how he, the first thing he said, it wasn't, oh, well, I did this, I did that, I did this. It's like, no. All glory be to God for allowing me to do this, and for giving me the opportunity and the platform to be able to say this. And we've seen it a lot with the NFL players this year too, which is, it's awesome to kind of see that turn, because that hasn't been something we see all the time here over the past, few years.
I'm sitting here thinking, a godly man being counterculture. How odd is that?
Right.
But yeah, to change again. I don't know much about golf, but to change sports, change athletes on you. Last year with the Buffalo Bills guy.
Damar Hamlin.
When you go from, just the extremes there, when, everything was going wide open, and then all of a sudden he drops dead on the football field, and you got a whole culture of NFL football. All of a sudden now, praying and crying out to God to save this man. And it just manifests itself in so many different areas. And the next day, you know, when you see that on national TV, you know, people have not experienced that on national TV in a long time, or if ever. And then all of a sudden, you got one of the main sportscasters the next day praying on live TV.
Yeah, right.
And so, you know, all of a sudden now that people realize there is a God, and He does still do miracles, and He does still deliver people. And today, that young man is back in the NFL. Now, I don't know to what capacity he's at, but you know, I do know he's still active in the NFL.
Yeah, the fact that he's still playing and live, alive, like you said, creating a miracle right there on the field. Somebody who was not alive when he hit the ground, like his life was over. And the fact that he has the opportunity to stick around, and it's like God's not done with me, you know, and to be able to not only live, but be able to live your life out, and then still come back to what it is that you were doing, you know, when this happened. Because there's a lot of people in life, man, when something comes up, you know, you run from that, you don't run back to it.
Wasn't that a Monday night football game?
That's a good question.
I think it was either Monday or Thursday, because it was nationally broadcasted on
you know,
the only game.
I'm thinking those stadiums hold upwards to maybe 90 to 100,000 people, and it's usually a Buffalo Bill game is packed. It's a huge fan base.
Yeah.
And so you've got just inside that building, you got upwards to 100,000 people witnessing it. Eyewitness testimony that God delivered this man out of a, you know, it's truly a death to life salvation experience.
I'd never in my life seen, you know, you have stuff that happens, bad injuries, freak accidents, stuff that happens on a field, and they stop play for a little bit of time. And, I mean, even some of the most gruesome injuries that have happened, guys breaking their legs. I mean, think about last year with FSU. Play gets stopped for a little while, but this is the first time that I think it's ever happened where play stopped.
The game
and it was one of those, we can't continue from that. We can't pick up the pieces and try to play this game. We had a player, a friend, a father who's on the field who lost his life right here on this field. And we don't know when he leaves this field, is he going to still be alive or not? You know, tomorrow, is he going to have that opportunity?
And the least, but in the least of these in that stadium wound up be the most important people was the emergency medical team.
That's right.
You hardly ever see them, but God used them right there in front of everybody, and people were actually getting offended for people talking about to restart the game. It was all of a sudden, now we have to stop the game.
Yeah, yeah, and they jumped into action immediately.
Immediately.
If they're not there, if they're not willing, if they're not waiting, if they're not ready, you know, circumstances could be different. But God had everything placed perfectly like it was supposed to be for that man to still be alive today.
What did Dr. Jason Jones say this morning? God's timing is perfect.
That's right. Perfect for everything. A lot of this lesson, once we get into it here in just a minute, is that same exact thing. And we're going to I know Noah kind of cut up about this, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. When Dr. Jones started preaching this morning, Noah was like, well, we should just put a camera on him and hit the record button and just call it a day.
That's right.
On the podcast, because that's what we're going to get to. But yeah, like I said, golf, like it, play it a little bit, but it's awesome to see not only Scotty Scheffler as great of a golfer as he is, but also what seems to me, at least from a distance, because, you know, I don't think any of us in this room have spent much time with him, like truly one-on-one, but what he puts out there is a very godly and just a good guy.
And now the whole world knows it.
That's right. And having that witness testimony right there in front of you, too, to get to watch in the Masters, which is a pretty big deal. That's awesome to see.
Yeah.
Noah, you got a random minute for us? You got some stuff.
I might have a few random facts for us.
I got some music for you. Oh, my button didn't work. My button's still not working. Oh well, hit us with that random minute.
All we needed is another button, right?
That's right.
All right, so Brother Bruce, just to kind of fill you in on this part of the show, this is what we call the random minute, and this is where I give you
useless information, I bet.
3 random facts that you did not know that you needed to know.
Okay.
So just for us to discuss and converse about. So you ready for this? Okay.
Yes, with it, Noah.
Fact number 1 of the day. All 3 of today's facts are about space.
Perfect.
Just so you know that. So here's number 1. 1 million Earths could fit inside of the sun. And the sun is considered an average size star.
So you're telling me 1 million Earths.
Mm-hmm. The rock that we're sitting on right now, the Earth, 1 million of our Earths could fit inside of the sun.
How do you spell that?
EARTHS. Earths. So I don't know. You definitely needed to know that. So now you know.
I want to know the people who take the time to do the math on this and say, okay, this is how big this is. This is
calculation for that.
What do you reckon it is that? How do you calculate something like that?
It's more calculations than I want to be a part of.
Yeah, there's a movie where the guy's got all these numbers or something, or the woman, she has all these numbers and stuff floating around her head. That's what I envision when you kind of talk about it like that. All right. So 1 million Earths. What we got next?
So fact number 2. Did you know that on Mercury, so on the planet Mercury, a day is twice as long as our year?
You ever seen Interstellar?
A day is twice as long as a year.
1 day.
1 day.
I did not know that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Have you ever seen Interstellar, though? Seriously? You've never seen it? Have you ever seen Interstellar?
I have not.
All right, so Interstellar is no spoilers. I won't spoil it. But they are trying to rescue and find these couple of other astronauts who have gone to different planets because they're trying to find, I guess, somewhere else to live. And they go to, I don't know what the planet name is, doesn't matter. But that's what happens. Like 10 minutes on their time is same thing. 10 minutes on that planet is a lot longer in life, like years go by a lot faster. What you got next?
All right, so here's our last fact of the day.
All right.
Neptune has only completed 1 orbit around the sun since its discovery.
Man, those are some long winters and long summers.
Outer ring.
It takes 165 years to complete 1 full orbit around the sun.
Wow.
For Neptune.
165 years.
That's crazy.
That's unbelievable, to be honest with you. 165 years.
Just shows you like how big space is.
It's kind of scary how big space is too, and how much nothingness there is out there too.
Yeah.
You got anything else on your random minute there?
That's all for the random minute.
All right. I got you a page up there for it. Knowing what you didn't know that you needed to know. That's the name for it there.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get into it. We don't have any story time segments that we usually have. You guys, same thing, right into the Instagram, comment below here on YouTube, send it to the email, whatever you guys have, any kind of awesome, amazing stories that you guys want to send into the show. We'd be glad to take that time and read them when that time comes. But let's get into the main topic today.
Sounds like a plan.
We fixing to raise the. We fixing to raise the.
I'm ready to raise it.
It takes a lot longer. I changed our music up a little bit. You like that?
Sounds good.
Yeah. I wish Brother Bruce could hear it over there. It's a little bit quieter for you.
Okay.
You're all right.
I'm okay.
All right, so here's what we got today. Today we're going to talk about fake fruit. That's going to be the topic of the day. So Noah.
You mean like that fake fruit that my grandma used to put out in the bowl at her house that sat on the table?
Exactly that. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Cool.
So let me ask you a
It
question.
didn't taste good. I'll tell you
It
that
does
much.
not. Most of the time it ended up turning into a game where you picked it up and played baseball with it.
Yeah.
Playing it in your grandma's room, in your room, wherever it was.
Or hit the dog or the cat.
Definitely taking the dog or the cat out here.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. I got it written down right here. You ever gone to the store, ordered something, got it in, then all of a sudden you realize, hey, this thing might not be legit. This might not actually be the thing that it's supposed to be.
Done that a couple of times.
Done that a couple times.
Online.
How about you, Noah?
Online shopping, I do that to you every time.
You see this thing right here? So
It's probably useless.
I bought this thing, and I don't know if this is from Amazon. It's meant to be for Apple, but it's meant so that way you can plug this into your phone or whatever takes this cable, and you can plug it into your TV and watch whatever's on your phone. So if you got a movie, I would have movies and stuff on my phone where I was like, oh, I can plug this into the TV and I can watch it. This thing worked for all of 3 days. Then it completely quit working. Completely quit working. And I bring this up, to be honest with you, as I kind of talk more into it. Apple's kind of finicky with their stuff anyways. But have you ever bought something that looks like it's the real deal and that it's really going to work and then it doesn't? Or maybe it works for a short amount of time and then it doesn't.
Would you like for me to give you an example?
Absolutely, give me one.
So recently, coming up on a year, I've been living in my house that I'm renting and all, and so when I get ready to move into there, I'm ordering different things for the house. And my parents are helping me figure out what all I need, and then I'll need a chair in the living room, maybe a couch and some tables and stuff. So we decide we're going to order some a coffee table and 2 couch side tables for the living room. So we go on Amazon, we're looking around, order some tables, come in, we're thinking these are going to be fantastic tables. They'll be great, last a long time.
Not so much.
We get them in, and everything's in one box. It was not a big box. And we get it out, start putting it together. The tables looked like they were miniature tables. I mean, they were not big at all. You put 2 of them together, they still did not look like the size that they were going to be. So deception of the size of the table. It was definitely not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Well, that exact same thing, we're not going to show it on here. You see that little rug right down there? Yeah. Well, the picture of it showed it filling up a space that looked just like this. Got it in. Clearly doesn't fit up that space. So sometimes you order things, you get things, or you're looking at things and you think that they're one thing. And it turns out, well, they come in. Most of the time, this is stuff that we've ordered, but they come in, and that's what happens. You get a rug that's about 3 times smaller than what it's supposed to be. Turns out not to be what you think that it's going to be. So today, talking about fake fruit. What do I mean by fake fruit? I kind of look at this in 2 different ways, and maybe you can kind of help me clear this up. I look at it in 2 different ways, one of which is a false teacher. But then the second way that I also look at this is somebody who claims to be Christian who truly isn't. When I say fake fruit to you guys, either one of you guys can answer. What is the first thing that kind of comes to your mind when we talk about it, like in church?
Well, from a teacher perspective, you always have to look back at what Jesus' words and his teachings and his very first teaching. The biggest teaching he had at the beginning of his ministry was the Sermon on the Mount. And he's got this huge audience, and the context is a good bit of the context is about relationships with the Father, relationships with him, and relationships with others. And he is very serious about his teachings when he says, there's only 2. When you compare fruits, he uses a couple of different analogies. There's 2 gates, there's 2 trees, there's 2 fruits, there's 2 foundations. One of them is good, one of them's bad. And the bad one can't produce good fruit, and vice versa. So he draws the line and says, you got to be one or the other. And if you do any kind of research, if you look at Pew Research, you look at the Rayner Research reports, anything that has to do with the study of church culture, what's tied for 1 and 2 about why people do not attend church is, number 1, they haven't been invited by a friend or family, but number 2 is the hypocrisy. The people are not authentic. They're not real, and they see it. They don't see a difference between the world and the church. And so those 2 fluctuate back and forth a lot of times on these research that the world is looking at the church and they don't think it's real. You have fake teachers and fake pupils.
Yeah. I think that's a big problem that we're running into, not only in church but in society in general. There's a lot of people that are out there that they may not even go to church, and they say, I'm a Christian, but then when you follow their lifestyle and you see how they actually are, whether they are going to church or not, kind of differs. Like you said, it's really hypocritical how a lot of times, again, you'll say, oh, well, I'm a Christian, and then next thing you know, you see them somewhere and you're like, there's nothing that I see in you that kind of follows that or exemplifies what a Christian truly is, or what that is that should mean. And I think that's also a scary thing in today's society too, because when you have so many people who are claiming to be one thing and they're actually not that thing, well, it really confuses people who don't know who Jesus is, or who might want to know who Jesus is but haven't yet experienced him, or haven't yet, like you said, had somebody ask them to come and be a part of this, or to invite them in any way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when I think about fake fruit and this type of conversation, I go back to the lesson that we had in youth one night, maybe sometime last year, with the cultural Christianity lesson, where you have this idea of someone who claims to be Christian, like you were saying, but the hypocrisy, they kind of follow the world and have one foot in, one foot out, hot, cold, like lukewarm type Christian. But it's important for us to look at, for me, myself, and it's important for me to look inside and see if there's different things that are going on in my life, or things where I might be struggling or falling, where I might be leaning towards that cultural Christianity lifestyle. I mean, it's not, I think this is a topic where, as far as cultural Christianity goes, it's not, it's not quite as black and white. There's different things, different aspects of your life where you might be struggling with something that is keeping you towards the world, but it's also drawing you away from the Lord.
Yeah.
So that's what I think about when it comes to this topic, is just this idea of, are we living in a way that's showing others that they need to be in church and grow their relationship with the Lord? Are we showing them, or do we look just like the world?
Yeah. Yeah, so a couple other things. Let me get our screen fixed here. First, I think we also have to understand, what is fruit in general? Do you have what you would consider, what would you say, what is fruit?
Fruits is when Jesus is talking about bearing fruit. I mean, and from the beginning and the middle and the end of his ministry, all throughout the Gospels, this is a key subject of making disciples.
Yeah.
A disciple is your fruit. It's not necessarily it's different than gifts. We talked about gifts this morning in Sunday school, but the fruit of the Spirit, there's 9 different characteristics, beginning with love. But the fruit of the Spirit is, he expects you to go out and he commands you to go out and make disciples, and teaching them and baptizing them, all the ordinances that he taught the original disciples before he ascended. That was one of the last things he told them. And then in one of the versions in of the book of Acts, there's an angel standing there at the ascension. He says, why are y'all still standing here? What are you still standing here for?
Yeah.
This same Jesus he's coming back.
Yeah.
He's coming back. And just like he left, he's going to come back. And so when he comes back, there's going to be some accountability, some reconciliation. And that's where the parables come in the middle of his ministry. Before you get to the return back to Jerusalem, he has a lot of teachings on parables. And in the middle of it, and specifically in Matthew Gospel in the 13th chapter, there's one of the wheat and the tares. There's a definite distinction. We talked about, Dr. Jason Jones preached on sowing and reaping today, but there's a very distinct difference between wheat and tares. The farmer goes out there and plants, some seed, and expecting one type of produce to come up. Well, it's in the middle of that story, that parable, the enemy comes and plants some false, fake, if you will, right, seeds. Well, as they grow, at first they look the same. When they bud out and they branch out, they look the same. But at the end, when it's harvest time, there's a distinct difference. There's one that's bearing, that has a bulb, it has a bloom on it. The other tare does not. And that's why he's using that parable and using that analogy to say, at the harvest time, there's going to be a very distinct difference between the real and the fake.
Yeah.
There's going to be the wheat and the tares. And he ends it. I mean, if you go on all the way through his ministry, he gives those parables of a distinction between his followers and the people that are not his followers.
Yeah. I had a buddy in college that used to use this example, and I kind of like to use it and remember it. But he used to talk about if you plant an apple tree, you're going to get an apple tree. And if you plant an orange tree, you're going to get an orange tree. And if you staple a picture of an apple to an orange tree, what kind of tree is it? It's an orange tree. So even if you staple pictures of an apple all over an orange tree, it's not going to change it. Just like you were saying, Brother Bruce, that orange tree is still going to grow up and it's gonna bear oranges, even though it's got pictures of apples on it.
Still an orange tree.
It's still going to be an orange tree. So it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah. I think it's also important that we understand, I go back all the way back to the vine and the branches, that is that out of John?
John 15.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John 15. Yeah. I can't remember because I had it typed in, but I couldn't remember if that's exactly where it was. But I think it's also important for us to understand that without Jesus, without that vine, we are nothing but dead branches that are here. You can't produce a fruit that can do anything without the vine, which is Jesus. In the purpose of it, because without it, you don't create disciples. The whole purpose in you being that vine and creating the fruit off of it is building and creating disciples for others as well in that.
Exactly. That every teaching and every parable, every story that he told in this topic is there's accountability, there's reconciliation. He leaves with some instructions. He gives the resources. Gives he gives us the manual, if you will, and he gives us assignment. And John 15, as you mentioned, that's the Last Supper, and he's letting them know that he's not going to be here the whole time. He's fixing to go away. He's going to Jerusalem, and they're going to kill him. But he gives them some specific instructions. He says, you got to abide in me, in my word. And that means remain or continue in order to bear fruit. He says, without me, you can do nothing. Yeah. And then shortly after that, he says, there's some pruning that's going to happen. Yeah. He's going to discard the ones the branches that do not produce real fruit or any fruit. He's going to discard them. And he's talking about at the end times, at the harvest, it's going to be evident who is his followers and who is the faithful, obedient believers. Is they've got some fruit, they got evidence. He ends that discourse saying, prove to be my disciple. In other words, there'll be evidence that you're my disciple is because you have borne fruit. You have reproduced yourself.
Yeah.
If you're a follower of Jesus, it's your commission and your command to go out and reproduce yourself. Reproduce. That when he says bear fruit, that means reproduce a follower of Jesus.
That's right.
Out of your ministry. And so, I could go on and to the end of his ministry, it comes down to sheep and goats. Very distinctive image there. Either you're a sheep or you're a goat.
That's wild because we talked about sheep and goats last week and part of that.
Well, and too, right before that, in Matthew 25, he starts out that passage with there's 10 virgins that's, got the same instructions. They got the same manual. They got the same instructor, same master. 10 virgins, 5 of them obeyed faithfully and listened and followed through. 5 of them were foolish. They thought they had all the time in the world to prepare and just acted foolishly, didn't prepare. The bridegroom come back and took the 5 that were.
Yeah.
And left the other 5 banging on the door. And there's no second chance. I mean, the bridegroom comes, gets the bride that's prepared. And the real bride is prepared for him. Watch and be ready. Be on alert. It says it over and over. So again, all throughout the Gospels, you see that story or that image of a king or a master or a farmer or whatever the storyline is there's expectations that he's given instructions, he's given the resources, and you're supposed to trust him and obey him and follow those instructions. But if you don't, then there's going to be consequences.
Yeah. I know we talked a little bit last week about that, how there's a TikTok ban. I doubt you're on TikTok very much, but
you would be right.
there's the ban coming around, and how important it is for us as believers to be prepared, but also to prepare others and to disciple to others, and letting them know that, hey, the TikTok ban, that's not the clock that you need to worry about running out. It's either you or Jesus coming back, and that time, we believe, is a time that's coming. Yes. And nobody knows the time or the place. And I joked about it last week that there's people that thought the eclipse was going to be that time, and it wasn't. But we are still to be prepared for that time when it comes. Yeah,
and the only way is through Jesus Christ. That right before that passage in John 15 is in John 14. He says, "I'm going to prepare a place for you. Where I am, you will be also." So there's a place that we're going for all of eternity. And if you were believing in Jesus Christ, believe what He's done on the cross and the power of the resurrection, then you're going to be in a place for all of eternity with Him. But if you don't, then there's another place for eternity that you're going to spend that lasts it's unending also. Yeah. And it's a place of torment. It's called hell and Hades and lake of fire. There's many different words in Scripture that describes. Again, you got either you're a follower or believer in Jesus. He says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me." He says what He means and means what He says. Yeah. And then there's only the fake fruit is going to be evident.
Yeah. So back to the fake fruit. I know in Romans 16 it talks about it. Paul writes about this in Colossians, but he also warns Timothy in Ephesus as well of false teachers coming. What is it? And you guys can help me understand this more. And these are just kind of a couple of questions that I have for whoever's watching, whoever's listening, to kind of be able to understand or see this when this time comes. How can we tell if somebody is a false teacher?
Well, first of all, there's again that you have to look at their ministry. Have they baptized anybody? A lot of times we look at baptism for the gauge. They have shared the gospel and they have discipled somebody into the point where they have made a commitment to Jesus Christ. But even after baptism comes discipleship. How many people have they discipled? That's the number one evidence or proof is who are they discipling? I mean, you got to look around and see what their ministry is producing. There's a lot of ministries that, if you want to look at numbers, but that's Jesus says in that Sermon on the Mount that there's a wide gate that leads to destruction.
Yeah.
There's another narrow gate that leads to eternal life, and few there find it. So I would not gauge it again on numbers, but again, who have they baptized and who have they followed? Who has got how many followers they got, and based on their discipleship method. We've got a tremendous problem in the church today about with evangelism and outreach and discipleship. It's not a secret that not just this convention, but other denominations are failing because the churches, they are not authentic and they're not real about making disciples.
I know that was where my relationship with the Lord really helped kind of springboard and take off, was in college when I was part of discipleship and evangelism, and had somebody I was meeting up with weekly, and he was pouring into me, and then through one-on-one meetings and through Bible studies was kind of what that looked like. Go meet somebody for coffee or go meet somebody for lunch and just see how their life is going and see what they're dealing with, and then open up the Word and jump into the Word together and talk about, we started going through a specific book. I think we started in Ephesians, and I had the guy that was discipling me, we started there, and then once I went through a year of that, I got on the leadership program with the on-campus ministry and started discipling people myself while I was still meeting up with him. So you just were able to almost have like this family tree, if you will, of people who were meeting up together and pouring into one another. And I mean, you could see just the fruit of different people's ministries as they poured into other people. And so I think that's a great example, perfect.
You mentioned Romans 16, and when you get to the end of Romans 16, it's kind of the list of his followers. Paul is giving them a mention or a nod, and there's at least 37 names there that he's discipled and he's done life with, and he's actually ministered to. And again, that's his list. That's jewels in his crown.
Yeah.
You know, he has actually lived life with these people and done ministry with these people. You know, and look at their list. Who have they actually discipled? And so you see all that through Jesus' ministry. Because Paul went and did the same model or example. Jesus went into a community. He met the immediate needs, whatever it was, didn't matter. He met that immediate need, gained that trust. Same thing, the model that the missionaries follow. They'll go in there and dig a well. They'll bring food. They'll bring clothes. But they meet needs. They love on them people, and then they gain the trust of those people and spend time with those people. That gives them the permission, if you will, or like a hall pass. Then after you gain the trust, they'll listen to you, and then you can share the gospel with them. And then everywhere he went, the crowd, he gained a little bit of the crowd grew. Or if you fast forward to Peter's ministry and through Paul's ministry into the book of Acts, it follows that model. He goes in the community and lives life with them and meets their need. You know, the guy you're talking about in college, your immediate need was you need somebody to study with, study scripture with. So he met that immediate need. There's other ways to do that. I mean, you could do it with any number of ways. But the main thing is to meet that immediate need and gain their trust and stick to the truth. And
like you said, sometimes that looks like meeting their physical needs sometime before you meet their spiritual needs.
Yeah, the Jesus model is you meet needs and gain their trust and love them. And Paul did it, Peter did it, and their discipleship list grew.
Kind of like what we're going to be doing with the food distribution this afternoon. Meet those physical needs, and
they get to know you and recognize you and trust that you're authentic, you're real, you're not out. You know, there's a lot of people following these people on TV, but are they actually followers or are they actually disciples of that TV person?
Yeah, good point. All right, so kind of rounding out on the false teaching part. If we were, let's just say we were out somewhere in college, or anybody that might be watching in the world or even in high school, what would you do, or how do you kind of confront the situation if you see, okay, well, this person is clearly not preaching what it is that we're meant to follow. They're clearly a false teacher. How do you confront? I know in a loving way, but how would you confront something like that? And a secondary question to that is as well, how do we, as people who want to also disciple to others, make sure that we don't become that same thing and start teaching false things that also, you know what I mean? They're the last thing we want to do is become a false teacher as well in that same way.
Well, again, to your first point, if you're talking about confronting the person, the false teacher, or you talking about the crowd, if you're talking about confronting the false teacher, I would say use the Jesus model. Go to them in private first and confront them and say, look, this is not right. You're wrong. And then if you don't get no satisfaction, you take a witness, you take a witness with you, or 2 or 3 witnesses. And then you expose them after you still don't get no results. You expose them. Again, that's the way Jesus did it. He called them out. He called them brood of vipers. He called them out, the fake people. Paul did the same thing. He followed Jesus' example. If you're talking about the crowd, and I'm assuming this to the second part of the question, is you need mentors. You need somebody in your life that's seasoned, that's been through this kind of stuff, and you stay close to them. And they, again, like Noah's talking about, this man poured into him, but it's reciprocating, but it's also perpetuating. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It flows out of you into somebody else. You need 2 or 3 disciples that you're living life with, and you're teaching and guiding them. That word abide, is continue or remain. Jesus said, you need to abide in me, continue, remain. Don't move to the right or the left from Jesus' teachings. Use his model. And again, it flows from one generation to the next. What are we handing off to the next generation?
Yeah.
Think about that. I mean, if you don't want the next generation, the false teachers, to get to the next generation, you need to know the truth, and you need to follow Jesus' model. You won't go wrong.
Yeah. I had seen this came up, I think, last week, if not the week before. There was a conference that was going on. I can't remember who the preacher was. I think Mar I don't remember what his last name was, but he was about to start his lesson, essentially, or preaching, and he had called out something that had happened the day before, or it may have even been the day of. And when he called out what was happening before him, another preacher in the audience, I guess that it was his church, stopped him from preaching and told him that this is something he should have confronted him about before, when it wasn't him that preached, and I kind of feel bad, speaking on it as far as not having their names and everything to kind of clear it up, but I'm not sure if you guys may have heard or seen the same thing where one preacher essentially got told to get off the stage because he didn't go to another and confront him about the issues that he saw the day before in one of the lessons as well.
Yes, Jesus is very emphatic about that process. You need, again, go to him in private, have that private discussion when you understand that there's division and there's sin or there's something wrong in that relationship or false teaching is being done. You go to them first in private. Then if that situation does not come to a resolution, then you take 2 or 3 witnesses with you, and then you expose them. Again, that's church discipline. Part of the problem with today's church culture is there's no consequences. People can leave this church and go right around the corner and join another church. Well, that church don't care if that person hadn't repented for what they've done to the other church.
Yeah. And
so there's no church discipline. A pastor can leave one church and go to another state and start a new ministry and get hired on to a, that church is so desperate for a pastor, they'll hire anybody, and he could, he's a sexual predator, or he's got financial immorality, or he's got some sort of immorality that he does and he's not repented of. He's not changed his ways, and we don't have no church discipline today. And I think you go back to Jesus' teachings again, the Jesus model, he called them out. Paul, he called them out when they were wrong. But he followed a process. He had you do it in private first. And I think they're right. If he can't get up and speak on something prior to that private conversation. I just don't think that, or he shouldn't, put it that way.
Yeah. I think what it was, trying to remember back, there was this church that he had gone to that he was preaching at. They had essentially put on like a show before it, and it was almost like, all right, this is a mode of entertainment to get you here, and then we'll preach to you. And he didn't find that the entertainment value that they used, because it wasn't just like normal music. I think it was something very secular that they were doing. Yeah. That was their way of essentially saying, all right, this is how we're going to entertain you for the day before, starting
almost like a bait and switch,
kind of like that, I guess, is the way that he looked at it. So I think he thought of it more of, instead of, hey, I'm going to confront you about this. Is that Matthew 18? Can you remind? Is that where it is? Okay. 18.
But again, I don't know the particulars or I don't know the subject. I hadn't read the article or whatever, or seen the video. But in church culture, there is a form of hooking them. You see whether you realize you're being hooked or not. There's a launching where you launch that sermon, where you launched that topic, and you were late to the crowd. Yeah. And some preachers do get extravagant with that method and mannerism, but all they're doing is trying to get your attention. They want that aha moment where you can grab their attention, keep their attention, but there's you still have to be above reproach.
Yeah. Yeah.
You still have to do it in a biblical way. You don't get, I wouldn't use too much of the world to introduce a sermon to a crowd in the church.
Yeah.
You probably need to stick with, better life examples than what the world is giving you.
Yeah, I don't believe that this was a very biblical way.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'll find the video and I'll share it with you guys so you guys can see and also have
You
context.
did it just a few minutes ago with golf.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We've had lessons that we've taught too before up here, and you kind of relate it with a story, that kind of goes along, but it all relates back into what you're preaching or teaching.
That's the Jesus model. Jesus used parables. Let me tell you, the kingdom. It was all about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is like this, or the kingdom of heaven is comparable to this, and then he would go into some sort of agriculture analogy or illustration to teach he used earthly terms to teach a heavenly meaning that was ultimately a timeless truth. It was true 7,000 years ago. It's true right now, and it's going to be true forevermore. And it's about the kingdom. Every one of those parables, he related to a earthly life experience so the people in his audience could relate. And that was his hook. He'd hook them into a conversation. Even the woman at the well in John chapter 4, what was the hook? The common denominator, the common theme is in Jesus' ministry is he would do life with them and he'd find that common denominator. Well, it was water. They was both tired. They was both hot. They was both thirsty.
Uh-huh.
And so he took that well, that common relational item, and turned it into a teaching moment.
Yeah.
A spiritual, he took an earthly analogy and turn it into a spiritual, timeless truth. You're a sinner. I'm the Lord. I can forgive you. The Messiah, the Christ, is talking to you. You're sinning now. You've always been a sinner. You need forgiveness. I'm the one that can give it to you. And before that story's over with, she's submitting to him because he shared the truth with her, and she is out witnessing, and it says many of that community were saved because of the testimony of that woman. Mm-hmm. And it all started with the hook. He hooked her with the well.
Yeah,
that's so good. I think a lot of times, like the word you were saying, abide earlier, abide. And remain. And I'd always heard too with abide, it's almost like you pack up and move in. And it's like to abide with someone is to pack up and move in with them.
Yes.
And so when you're abiding in Christ, you take your old self, you don't pack it up and take it with you, but you do put off the old self and you move in with the Lord, right? You're following him and abiding in him. And I think when we abide in the Lord and his word, we start to see things in life like sports or different, topics or things that we can use and relate them to the scripture and bring them up in conversation with one another. I know a lot of times in my own life, when I feel closest to the Lord in my study time and quiet time and stuff, a lot of times that's when I'm most comfortable bringing up different things in this world that I can relate back to scripture and talk to people and have those conversations about.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier to be able to, because for somebody who's either lost, gone astray, whatever it is, it's very difficult for you to just come up and just Jesus, this. And if you can't tie something to what they can relate to, they're lost, because it can be very difficult and complicated to really understand if you just say, hey, there was this guy, right? He lived, then he died, then he rose again, and you should follow him. If you just hit somebody with that, they're going to be like, what were you watching on Sci-Fi Channel? I don't know what you're talking about right now. So I can understand, in the term that you've used in hook,
yes.
It almost makes it sound like it's a wrong thing, but it's not.
It's not. It's a method and a mannerism that has been adapted from Jesus.
Yeah. Again,
Jesus told in John 15, think about why he was using that word abide, remain. In Christian culture, we got all these buzzwords for the last several years. It's been connect church, connect groups, connect this. I mean, it's relational. And what Jesus is saying, you need to stay connected to the Father, which is the vine. Vine. I'm the vine. My Father's the vine dresser. You're the branches, and what comes after the branches on the end of it is the fruit.
Yeah.
And so in order to bear fruit, to bear much fruit, he says, you have to stay or remain or stay connected to me.
Yep.
And I'm connected to the Father. You're connected to me. and then your disciples is below that. And so that's what he's saying. At the Last Supper, he's saying, this is a major teaching. Y'all need to understand this. I'm going away. I'm leaving. And this is what I need you to know. You need to go make disciples. You need to bear fruit. Harvest time's coming. They understood all those terms that he was using. They connected with all that. But that was his hook. His main hook was abide.
Yeah.
The grapes, if they get pruned and they get discarded, if they get disconnected from the branch and the vine, what happens?
They're gonna die.
And he's using again an earthly term to talk about an eternal, heavenly, timeless truth.
Yep.
There's another spot in eternity where people are tormented and perish, and those get discarded, at the harvest. And it thousands of years later, it's still true.
Yeah.
If you're not connected to Jesus, you're gonna perish.
Yeah, the speaking of the abide and the branches, the vines, the fruit, all that comes from, I finally saw it here, John 15:4-5.
Yes.
It's where that is. And this is kind of, I'll bring up the last really question on this topic here, is if we know somebody who claims to be Christian, who claims to be this, and we see, okay, man, they're kind of going astray. They're saying they live this way. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be, so far to say as somebody, a spouse, if you're married to somebody, again, we have so many different, we do a lot of this stuff like with the youth and everything leading and stuff. So we deal a lot with them, but this applies to all. This doesn't just apply to youth. This applies to, again, this could be a family member, or just a friend of yours. If we see that, hey, they're kind of going astray here, they're saying one thing, but they're doing a whole lot of different things. And yeah, they show up here on Sunday and they're here, but I don't see that same life in them out there. How can we kind of help, I guess, reel that person back in, or say, hey, this is just kind of what I'm saying or what I'm seeing. And I know you're saying this one thing, you're saying that this is who I am, this is what I'm about. I love Jesus, I'm following Jesus and all this, but your life doesn't really replicate that outside of here on a Sunday. How can we kind of approach them about that? And this may be the same answer to approaching somebody that we see as a false teacher, I guess. But I guess that's kind of the question there.
You want to go first? Or
Sure.
You want me to go? Because we done been through this.
Yeah. My first thought is kind of, examine yourself first. Make sure, what's the scripture talks about. Take the log out of your own eye before you, talk about the plank or, the speck in somebody else's eye or whatnot. So you first kind of want to make sure, that you can speak on that or whatnot, but then also in a loving way, like we talked about a little bit earlier, and have that, tough conversation with them. But what you got, Brother Bruce?
All right, so again, in the Sermon on the Mount, and I got to go back to 1 Corinthians 5-7
right.
too, like we talked about
Our Sunday school passages.
Yeah, and so again, in the Sermon on the Mount, what he's quoting is is Sermon on the Mount about the log in your eye and the speck in your brother's eye. In other words, in the world, most lost people are going to say, if you confront them about this issue, you're judging me, or you're a hater, or you're a bigot, you're this, you're that. But that's where we land at as Christians. We're judgmental. He says that, and he says, don't judge them, but you will know them by their fruit. When he ends that discourse in Matthew 7, he's letting you know, don't be judgmental. You can't be, especially hypocritical judgment. You can't be going out and sinning and have sin in your life, and then look at your brother and point his sin out and not deal with yours.
Yeah.
Is basically what he's saying. But he says you'll know them. You will have knowledge. You'll be able to tell real, authentic Christians from false, hypocritical Christians. That was the main word he used with the Pharisees. You hypocrite. You hypocrite. In Matthew 23, there's 8 woes. Woe to you, you hypocrite. You're supposed to be a religious leader. You teaching this thing, and your lifestyle proves to be different.
Yeah.
Paul's teaching in 1 Corinthians 5, 6, and 7 deals with all types of relationships with you and others. you get into chapter 6, and he's talking about this these so-called brothers in the congregation in the church. He's saying deal with them. You've got to go deal with that situation one-on-one, and you've got to call him out on it and be specific about it to bring him back in the fold. But he says, don't think that I'm talking about the worldly people. I'm talking to you about the so-called brother.
Yeah.
You are to go to the world, and you are supposed to evangelize, outreach, and go, and be with them. I'm talking about the so-called brother in your church that's living like the world. You're to go to him and confront him about that situation. You have all the permission, scriptural permission in the world to apply church discipline to that guy. And that's what's missing. But he deals with sexual morality all throughout there. He deals with single, married, divorced, all throughout those scriptures. But he deals with the so-called church folk that are hypocritical. They basically, that means mask. It means it's a drama term. They've got a mask on. They're playing a part.
Yeah.
Is what that means. But again, the hypocritical Christians needs to stop. If they think they're going to win and make disciples by not being authentic and not living out the spiritual disciplines of Jesus, they're fooling themselves.
Yeah. I think we've also kind of softened it a little bit because we're afraid to hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah,
we're afraid to hurt somebody's feelings, but we're not afraid to just let them go live their life and end up in hell instead of.
In that passage, that's how it starts out. Paul talks in 1 Corinthians 5. He says, I'm going to hand that person over to Satan. He's sleeping with his stepmama. And y'all ain't done nothing about it. He says, y'all actually have not dealt with this situation. He was upset with him. Do I need to come there and handle that situation? Because when I come, I'm handing him over to Satan so that he will be saved. The purpose is his salvation. Paul's got his salvation on his mind. He's going to discipline him in order that he gets saved. Later on in that second letter, he's having to tell the church to restore him because he's repented and they won't forgive him. Yeah. He says, I have forgave him. Y'all restore him because it's too much for him to handle.
Right.
Y'all betraying him. Y'all won't restore him. Put him back into the congregation. He's repented. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it's an important part. We can't be afraid to
reconciliation,
to come and talk to somebody and say, hey, let's kind of work this out. And I think there's a difference in somebody in the church who you believe to be saved and then somebody who's lost, who's just out in the world too. There's two different approaches to that. Yes. I feel like you would think inside of the church it should be a little bit simpler to be able to come to that person and say, hey, this is what we're dealing with. You might want to kind of check yourself, I guess.
I promise you, Jesus and Paul and Peter, none of them had problems with confrontation.
Yeah. Well, that's fake fruit. That's fake fruit. You got anything else on the topic
He's
here?
done a lot of name calling too.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Good on that. Brother Bruce, you got anything else on?
I can sit here all day if y'all want to.
Sit here all day and want to talk about it?
We fixing to raise the... We fixing to raise the... meter. We fixing to raise the meter.
Brother Bruce got to listen to a very little bit of it.
I can hear it over there in my left ear. I'm thinking, I can hear some of that.
Well, that's what I was thinking about when Brother Bruce, he's like, I don't need the headphones. I was like, he's not going to be able to hear any of the music when we play it on there. But that's all right.
Yeah, we listen to different music in that.
That's all right. Well, that's fake fruit. That is the topic of this week that we talked to. Again, I want to say off the end right here, Brother Bruce, thank you again for coming and joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and being a guest on here. You bring so much wisdom and knowledge of.
Maybe I'll get to come back.
Absolutely, I believe so. Anyways, but again, we're very grateful for you coming on and helping us out. And again, having the knowledge and the understanding means a lot to be able to apply it to some of the lessons that we teach and we kind of go through on here. So again, I really appreciate it. Noah, you got anything else on?
I'm going to be ignorant for a minute.
Go ahead.
if somebody wants to follow up with this, how do they do that?
If they wanted to follow up, they could reach out on Instagram. They can comment on YouTube. They can email us. If you're listening on podcast, we have all of the in the description of it. If you're just listening, not watching, there are links to everything. You can link to the YouTube channel. I put the email on there, Instagram, all of the ways that you could link to it. All of that is in the description of everything that we post. So it gives opportunity. I'll put your phone number on there if you want me to.
No, I got enough phone calls.
We don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Well, Noah, in closing here, you got anything for us, or want to add anything to it?
I don't think I have anything to add. I've been waiting on a good dad joke this week, though.
A good dad joke?
Do you have one for us?
I do. I'll play us some music as we kind of get out of here. Before I do,
This is my favorite part of the week.
This is your favorite. You guys, you ever wake up grumpy?
Every now and then.
Every now and then. I don't. I just let her sleep.
Yes.
I just let her sleep. Hey, we appreciate you guys listening and watching. If you guys watching on YouTube, again, thank you to Brother Bruce over here for joining in with us.
Yes.
That's Noah. I'm Holden.
That's Holden. That's Brother Bruce.
Over there.
Man, it's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun. We'll check in with you guys next week. Make sure you guys keep growing upstairs.